Ever since the age of DLC began, not with a bang, but with a gold-plated... video game fans have long been wary of the practice. You see, for every genuinely great season pass, there have been many more examples of publishers using DLC as a low-effort cash grab to siphon more money from their most prolific customers. I'm Ewan, this is WhatCulture Gaming, and here are 10 DLCs that totally miss the point of the game. Number 10. The Final Horizon, Sonic Frontiers. If you're wondering why Supersonic looks so pissed off here, it's because the requirements to actually unlock his new super form in Sonic Frontiers are about as pleasant as a Sriracha sauce enema. While Sonic Frontiers was largely appreciated by the wacky, wonderful, and slightly terrifying Sonic fandom, look, I can only give my insight from the outside looking in, okay? Its DLC, called Final Horizon, didn't fare so well. Simply put, Final Horizon brings all of the base game's issues to the forefront and makes them worse. Frontiers' loose controls and graphical pop-ins were more forgivable in the main game, as the challenges were simple enough that you could work around those issues. Final Horizon, however, demands a level of precision platforming simply not present in the base game's challenges, resulting in howlingly frustrating deaths and restarts of the same damn sections over and over again. Oh my god, I'm being driven mad. I mean, look at poor Scott Tailfoot. He's goddamn traumatized by this thing. Final Horizon ensured that Frontiers' final blow saw the game split its trousers open and let one gigantic Eggman rip over its unsuspecting fanbase. Number 9. The Ultimate Shortcut Bundle, Battlefield 4. The joy of multiplayer first-person shooters comes from mastering their unique systems, or if you're a sicko like me, it comes from being blown up repeatedly by artillery and hell let loose. Either way, multiplayer shooters thrive on the sense of achievement that comes from hard-earned proficiency. Or, you know, you could just chuck another $50 at the publisher and unlock enough weaponry to level a small town. Such was the case with Battlefield 4's Ultimate Shortcut Bundle, a President Grant's worth of DLC that gave an undeniable advantage to those with the means and lack of scruples to pay for it. Those who purchased the bundle gained immediate access to the game's best weapons, giving them a massive head start over us mere unfortunate sons who had to slum it in the normal ranking system. However, I would say that anyone paying $50 to unlock every gun in the game probably is just losing at life anyway, but I digress. So, happy anniversary, Battlefield 4. We'd like to say that DICE learned its lesson from this, but then it made Battlefield 2042. Man, you'd think they'd have figured things out 2038 games later. Number 8. Get to Work, The Sims 4. Ever since The Sims launched way back in 1998, yes, it really has been 25 years, its raison d'etre has remained the same. Players can either live vicariously through their Sims, or torture the poor sods by making them go for a swim, then removing the ladder so they can't get out, like some kind of Sims jigsaw. Crafting tests for an ungrateful sim populace. Sorry, I literally don't know where that came from. Anyway, let's talk about the excruciatingly dull Get to Work DLC pack, which unfortunately interrupts the fantasy with the drudgery of daily labor. I am definitely not the jigsaw killer. Now, to be clear, jobs have always been a part of the Sims' lives. They've just occurred off-screen, out of view of the player. The Get to Work pack pushes the Sims' bread-earning activities front and center though, and in the process makes their lives, and ours, a heck of a lot duller. None of the jobs offered in the pack are remotely fun to engage with, and watching your Sim slog their way through their tedious workday completely wrecks the idea that they're living their best lives. Basically, if you want your Sims to suffer, just stick with the swimming pool, yeah? Number 7. The Season Pass, Marvel's Midnight Suns. Marvel's Midnight Suns was a beautifully bizarre mashup that, against all odds, successfully combined a wonderfully deep card battler with a Persona-style social system that encouraged you to hang out with the Avengers between missions. I do have to ask what the Avengers were doing in a Midnight Suns game, but nerd tantrum aside, this was a good title. Sadly, horrendously poor sales means we will never see its like again, which is what makes the small slice of additional content we did get so goddamn disappointing. Midnight Suns' Season Pass was, frankly, terrible. The original game sang because of its intricate turn-based battles, which pitted the game's expertly designed cast of heroes against a thoughtfully crafted selection of enemy combatants. The Season Pass, unfortunately, failed on both of these fronts. Now, the DLC featured a bevy of heavy hitters: Deadpool, Storm, Venom, and Morbius. Wait, what are you doing here? Get out of here, you wee rascal. Regardless of Morbius morbin everywhere, none of these characters were given the care they deserve, with many of them reusing abilities and animations from the game's original group of heroes. On top of this, the new vampire enemy faction were a chore to fight, especially with their irritating ability to resurrect fallen troops. All in all, Midnight Suns' DLC was a wasted opportunity that saw one of 2022's best games fizzle out of existence, rather than going out in a Johnny Blaze of glory. Number 6. The Verizon Costumes, Marvel's Avengers. Oh, man, why is that a thing I've had to say aloud with my mouth? Marvel's Avengers Verizon Costumes. Stop it, gaming, you're drunk. Marvel's Avengers is arguably the most potent argument yet against the game industry's obsession with live service. What started off as a promising-looking single-player action RPG soon devolved into an MMO-like mess of repetitive missions, boring loot, and the bizarre image of Hulk choosing which ribcage to equip to increase his DPS. Hulk confused by gear system, huh? Gaming and Marvel fans turned their noses up accordingly, resulting in the game's eventual delisting, which is a shame given that some of the combat in here and the graphical fidelity on display was pretty impressive. It was just stuck in a terrible shell of a live service. As warnings against corporate greed and short-sightedness go, they don't come much clearer, which is why the ability to deck the Avengers in Verizon emblazoned apparel is at once completely outrageous and wholly appropriate. As Verizon is currently under investigation for using toxic lead in their cables, seeing the Avengers advertise their brand is grotesquely fascinating. The world's most famous champions for justice, sponsored by a company seemingly epitomizing the worst aspects of corporate America. Number 5. The true ending, Beautiful Katamari. Speaking of poorly thought out cash grabs, the original Katamari Damacy became a cult classic soon after its 2004 release. Creator Keita Takahashi's game about amassing random objects into a bigger and bigger ball was a weirdly attractive delight, helped by the game's charming visuals and catchy soundtrack. It was also a cutting commentary on the dangers of consumerism. The act of ceaselessly collecting items to make a bigger and bigger ball until there was nothing left to collect was Takahashi's method of railing against the destructive nature of consumer culture. Unfortunately, his publisher did not get the message. In 2007, Bandai Namco released Beautiful Katamari on the Xbox 360. Excited by the prospects of charging customers even more money for a game they'd already paid for, Bandai Namco made the contentious decision to hide the game's true ending behind a paywall. Although Beautiful Katamari's final levels were included on the disc, to actually play them, you had to purchase an additional DLC pack. Number 4. Wardens Keep, Dragon Age Origins. Those who booted up Dragon Age upon its release in 2009 soon came across an NPC called Levi Dryden. Mr. Dryden could be found loitering around the player's camp, hoping that the hero would help him explore a haunted castle to help clear his family name. Agree to help him though, and you'd be whisked away to a checkout screen, asking you to pay £5 for the privilege of helping Levi out of his mess. Because nothing says grimdark medieval fantasy more than a random NPC joining your camp and demanding you pay actual real-world money to go on a quest. You know, it's kind of fun to imagine the conversation the player would have had with Levi off screen. What the hell is a pound? Why do I need to give you 5 of them to solve your problem? You should be paying me. Now, Dragon Age was a real labor of love for BioWare. They spent over a year solely focusing on world building. Given that, you can't imagine the writers were too happy to see corporate-mandated DLC being shoehorned into the baby with all the subtlety of an action figure screaming, "Buy me!" from a Toys R Us aisle. Number 3. Pinnacle Station, Mass Effect. The first Mass Effect game is beloved for many reasons. It introduced us to one of the most evocative sci-fi galaxies ever created, and gave life to some of the most beloved party members in RPG history. Oh, Garrus. My Garrus. But for all its undoubted virtues, the original Mass Effect's combat has always felt like a bit of a first draft. Mass Effect wasn't BioWare's first attempt at real-time RPG combat, but it often feels like it is. Floaty physics, imprecise aiming, and a near total lack of impact from your weapons means the game's many fights are occasions to be endured rather than enjoyed, which is like amplified by double when you throw in the Mako. As such, the Pinnacle Station DLC was a total misfire. Its USP was that it provided more than a dozen unique combat scenarios for buyers to indulge in. Unfortunately, due to the aforementioned issues, actually playing the DLC is an experience akin to wearing BO scented deodorant. It doesn't solve your problems, and it just gives you more of it. Number 2, Lonesome Road, Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas was a great RPG, but a pretty terrible FPS. Guess which part of the equation Lonesome Road focused on? Prior to the DLC's release, New Vegas developers Obsidian had crafted a trio of excellent DLC packs to support the main game, and the hope was that Lonesome Road would see their work on the franchise end on a high note. Sadly, it wasn't to be. Lonesome Road ignored what made New Vegas so great to begin with: its stellar writing and quest design, in favor of precision VATs highlighting the game's shonky combat. The DLC was a tiresome trudge through a detritus-lined canyon that bombarded the player with high-level enemies and mini-bosses galore, in what felt like a bad pastiche of the Borderlands games. Frustratingly, the final conversation with Lonesome Road's villain is classic Fallout fare: weighty, thought-provoking, and excellently written and acted. Yet it stands in such blatant contrast with the tedious 3-hour-long gauntlet that precedes it, you can't help but wonder what might have been if Obsidian hadn't spent so much of the DLC's runtime playing against their strengths. And number 1, the Oscorp Search and Destroy Pack, Amazing Spider-Man. As the stratospheric sales of the recently released Marvel Spider-Man 2 show, people love nothing more than the chance to slip into the shoes of the webbed wonder. What is it that makes Spider-Man so much fun to play as? Is it the exhilaration of web swinging across New York? The thrill of battling his iconic rogues gallery? The relentless dad joke level quipping? Well, according to Activision, it's none of that. The real answer is the chance to play crappy knockoff games on Peter Parker's fictional cell phone, which they did in 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man tie-in game. For a mere price of $2.99, true believers could purchase the Oscorp Search and Destroy pack, allowing them to experience the giddy highs of playing 2 poorly made rip-offs of classic video games on Peter's Oz phone. Whether fighting waves of robots and Space Invaders clone Gwen's Hunter, or rampaging through Manhattan as a giant snake-like creature in Destroy the City, the only thing you'll be amazed by is the fact that someone from Activision genuinely believed that someone would pay for this. The Amazing Spider-Man's delisting means it's no longer possible to sample the dubious delights of the Oscorp Search and Destroy pack, but maybe that's for the best. This DLC is one blip that should stay in the dust. Like, forever.